All right. Good morning, everyone, and afternoon, and welcome. Today's session, Achieve Your AI Potential, Powering the Dynamic Warehouse with Decision Intelligence, is all about moving AI from buzzword to bottom line results. We'll explore how decision intelligence and generative AI help warehouse teams make faster, smarter calls on slotting, labor, workflow, performance, and travel, turning the data that you already have into action you can measure. It's a practical look at building a more dynamic, responsive operation. Here to guide us through it, please join me in welcoming our speaker, Andre Lessa, Director of R&D at Lucas Systems. Andre is a hands-on engineering leader and creative technologist with over 20 years of experience designing, building, and scaling AI-driven, data-intensive and cloud-native systems. Throughout his career, which spans roles as a founder, CTO, director, and manager, Andre has remained deeply connected to technical execution, architecture, and coding. His extensive expertise covers artificial intelligence and machine learning, including natural language processing, speech recognition, and modern LLM-based architectures. Andre, welcome, and thanks for sharing your insight today.
Thank you, Evan, and thanks everyone for joining us today. This presentation is about AI, but not the technology behind it. It's about how AI helps people make better warehouse decisions. Warehouse operations are becoming too dynamic for people to optimize manually. Just think about a typical day in a distribution center. Priorities change by the hour, order profiles shift, labor availability changes, equipment goes down, and customer expectations never stop. In an environment like that, warehouse performance is really the sum of thousands of operational decisions made throughout the day. So before we dive into the examples, let's define what success should look like by the end of today's session. By the end of this webinar, I really hope that you think less about AI tools and more about bringing operational improvements. Today, many AI decisions focus on technology instead of business outcomes. With this presentation, we're going to talk about where value comes from, which decisions matter, where Gen AI fits, and how to prioritize investments. And that's really important because the AI conversation has changed dramatically. 5 years ago, companies wanted to understand AI. Today, they want to operationalize it. The AI conversation has changed. Organizations no longer need just another AI demo. They're really looking to have more measurable business value. 5 years ago, organizations were asking, what's AI? There was a lot of curiosity, pilots, and experiments everywhere. But now just fast forward to where we are in 2026. The conversation is about deployment, production, decisions, focus. AI is now part of daily business life. And I'm sure that most, if not all of you, already interact with AI one way or another. And this discussion has shifted from awareness to application at this point. And warehouses happen to be one of the best places to create that value. And if you ask me why, well, that's because warehouse managers make thousands of decisions every single day. If you think about what happens during a typical shift inside a warehouse, supervisors are constantly making decisions. Which orders should go first? Where should people be working? Should inventory be repositioned? How do we keep work flowing while minimizing travel? None of those decisions happen just once. They're happening continuously throughout the day, and they all influence one another. Long before Gen AI became a hot topic, warehouse operations were already getting value from AI-driven decision support. Machine learning, deep learning, and optimization became embedded in warehouse execution many years ago. Just take a look for an example. For instance, with Jennifer, Lucas introduced AI-based speech technologies long before Alexa and Siri. And today we are exploring Gen AI possibilities. There are lots of opportunities out there. So while AI has been part of warehouse operations for years, the way organizations use AI has evolved. And warehouse intelligence has evolved through 3 very different stages. The first stage is automation. Traditional automation can only follow predefined rules. And that's going to help you with questions like what should happen, how it should happen. The next stage in that evolution was about decision intelligence. Systems just learn from operational data and optimize decisions. And that's decision intelligence is when you get help with questions like, what is the best action? How can I optimize this? And the third stage in this model is when you combine decision intelligence and Gen AI. That's where technology helps humans understand, why is this happening? And what should I do next? At this point, we're looking for AI to generate meaningful explanations. So let's take a closer look at what we mean by decision intelligence, because that is what's behind many of the AI capabilities we're going to discuss today here with this presentation. Decision intelligence continuously answers one question: what's the best thing to do next? And that's all about optimization. Humans simply cannot optimize thousands of decisions in real time. Decision intelligence is about using operational data to determine the best next action. With decision intelligence, you're going to be using AI to gather information, evaluate options, recommend actions, and learn continuously. It's a loop. So what are the biggest decisions that can impact performance inside a warehouse? If we improve decisions about the 5 drivers you see here in this slide, we can indirectly improve almost everything else. Most warehouse operational improvements come from improving only a handful of critical decisions. We're talking about slotting, labor allocation, also known as workforce planning, workflow prioritization, performance management, travel optimization. And those are just some of the main ones. I'm sure AI at some point is going to help us identify other high impact drivers in the future. And that's why you have bucket number 6 in there. And let's begin with probably what's the hardest optimization problem within a warehouse. Slotting isn't complicated because of one variable. It's complicated because of all of them. Every product needs a home in the warehouse, but finding the best location is not that simple when you have thousands of competing possibilities. Slotting is about placing inventory where it will have the greatest operational impact. Every decision involves thousands of SKUs, hundreds or thousands of locations, and many competing factors. Those factors are constantly changing as demand, seasonality, and inventory change. The result is an enormous optimization problem with millions of possible combinations. And that's exactly the kind of problem AI is designed to solve. So instead of building complicated models ourselves, we let the system learn them. Traditional slotting depends heavily on manual expertise. And today we don't need those complex spreadsheets anymore. We think there's a better way, and that involves using AI to learn patterns, recommend placement locations, using machine learning to adapt automatically, essentially allowing the system to improve over time. Keep in mind that the best slot for a product today may not be the best slot for that same product next month or even next week. So finding the best answer once is not enough anymore. You really have to keep adapting. Yesterday's optimal slotting may already be wrong today. You have to keep learning by continuously ingesting the latest picking and replenishment data. You need to consider forecast changes too. And another point to consider is that AI becomes much more useful when people can interact with those slotting recommendations. The goal for AI should not be just to offer better recommendations. AI should also help with better decision support. Recommendations, they only create value if people trust and use them. That means AI should not operate like a black box. It should help people explore recommendations, understand the reasoning behind them, and see the recommendations continuously improve over time. So here's what you should do. Challenge the recommendations. Ask what-if questions. Is there a better slot for this product? Or is there a better product for this location? Look for tools that help you visualize what's happening. Use heat maps and operational data to understand picking patterns and replenishment activity. You should also make sure you teach the system. If you reject a recommendation, capture the reason so AI can learn from that feedback. and leverage business context, combine recommendations with inventory levels, allocations, or any other operational metrics, such as min-max, because the goal isn't to replace your human judgment, it's to make every decision better informed. And keep in mind that inventory and slotting is only half the equation here. The other half is making sure that the right people are doing the right work at the right time. Talking about labor allocation, well, labor allocation is probably the most dynamic operational decision inside the warehouse. And it's no surprise that labor remains one of the top concerns for warehouse leaders. In fact, if you look at the latest issue of MHI Solution magazine, that magazine this month is dedicated to that very topic. So the reason is simple. Demand changes much faster than staffing plans. And some examples for that include order volume and operational priorities. Adding or moving people isn't always possible as well, and supervisors are always deciding where every associate can have the greatest impact. So those decisions directly affect productivity, service levels, and overtime. So the big question for this is, how can AI help supervisors stay ahead? Well, AI can shift labor management from reactive to proactive. We see it too often that supervisors spend their day chasing bottlenecks instead of preventing them. Decision intelligence helps supervisors stay ahead of the operation by anticipating where labor will be needed next, recommending the best course of action, and explaining the trade-offs behind those recommendations. But optimizing people allocation alone is not enough. We also have to optimize how the work moves through the warehouse. True optimization is going to happen when everything moves together. People, equipment, and work, they often become disconnected. The first step is making sure that the right people are doing the right work at the right time. But even perfect labor allocation is not enough if the work itself isn't flowing through the warehouse efficiently. You're going to find that some work arrives too early, some work arrives too late. Some teams wait while others become bottlenecks. Orders, they stop flowing smoothly from induction to shipping. And that's why orchestration is all about connecting people, equipment, and workflows into one coordinated system. When we look at all this, AI's job is not simply to optimize people or containers independently. Its job is to keep the entire operation essentially moving as one coordinated system. But remember this, AI should optimize the system, not just individual resources. Without orchestration, every resource spends time waiting. You should be looking for AI to help you with smarter sequencing, better synchronization. AI should help you predict movement and maximize throughput. Take, for example, a peak model. AI can continuously decide which totes should be inducted next and where labor is needed. And that's going to help people in work stay balanced across every zone instead of creating bottlenecks. Or consider AMRs. AI can orchestrate both together, predicting where they will be next. So each AMR spends more time working and less time waiting. The common thing here is coordination. AI should not be optimizing one decision at a time. AI should be continuously improving the entire flow of work. Now let's look at another decision that benefits from the same learning approach. We're going to talk about performance management. Performance should be measured against today's reality, not yesterday's assumptions. Performance management is not about measuring people. It's about understanding what performance should look like under changing operating conditions. Static labor standards, they do not reflect dynamic operations. Take, for instance, engineered labor standards, time studies, or benchmarking. They are static in nature, but warehouse conditions are very dynamic. So you should be looking for AI to help you learn the expected performance, understand context, coach better, and do better planning. The real advantage is that AI-driven performance don't stay static. Looking at travel, looking at transforming performance management using AI. As the warehouse changes, AI updates its understanding of what good performance looks like. Traditional performance standards are expensive to build and difficult to maintain, and that makes it very appealing to use AI to learn from actual warehouse activity instead of relying on static time studies. As the operation changes, the performance model automatically adapts. The result is way more accurate expectations, lower maintenance effort, and better operational outcomes. For example, take Pet Supermarket, increased picking productivity by 1/3 and was able to process over 60,000 pieces without overtime. And that was up from a previous threshold of 45,000. So the use case here is that by replacing static labor standards with AI, they learned it from their actual operations, and they were able to raise performance while reducing overtime. Another major decision that AI can dramatically improve is how people move throughout the warehouse. When we look at travel optimization, every unnecessary step is lost productivity. One of the biggest costs in a warehouse is simply walking around. The real opportunity here isn't making people walk faster, it's really helping them walk less. When we look at travel optimization, with AI, we can optimize movement across the entire warehouse. Traditional batching is going to focus on processing orders. With AI, you can focus on minimizing movement. How? AI can help you group work based on where it happens, not just when it arrives. AI can help you generate the best route through the warehouse in real time. And that's going to help you reduce unnecessary travel and congestion. And that's going to keep people and automation working together efficiently. So across every example that we have covered here so far, there is one common theme that keeps emerging, and that's data. The data is already there. The intelligence often is not. Most organizations, they don't have a data shortage. They actually have an insight shortage. The data often already exists. The challenge is turning that data into actionable intelligence. Most warehouses are not suffering from a lack of data. Let's be clear about that. They're suffering from a lack of connected, actionable intelligence. Across all 5 examples that we looked at today, we see that data is already being collected. Reports, they already exist. Dashboards, likely they already exist too. But data is often siloed. Relationships are difficult to identify. Analysis requires a lot of expertise, and insights are not always delivered when decisions need to be made. And decision intelligence helps identify the best action. So note that figuring out the best action is only half of the problem. People also need to understand, trust, and act on those recommendations. So the question now is, how do we build understanding and trust? And the answer might be that we can do that through better communication. And that's where GenAI comes in. GenAI alone does not optimize warehouse optimizations. And it's not going to help you optimize warehouse operations. GenAI is most valuable when it's connected to operational systems and decision intelligence. GenAI doesn't replace the operational intelligence engine directly, but it makes that intelligence easier for people to access, understand, and act on. So when decision intelligence and GenAI work together, the result is much broader operational awareness. Let's think about it for a second. A supervisor may need to know what to do next. A manager may need to understand operational risks. A director may want to know what is driving overtime. Different roles asking different questions, but they can all benefit from the same underlying intelligence presented in a more accessible way. So how should organizations adopt capabilities like that? I wanted to point out that successful AI adoption happens one capability at a time. So think of AI adoption as building a foundation, not skipping to the top floor. You start with visibility. You have to know what's happening. Then you go to prediction, so you know what's likely to happen. You get to decision intelligence, and that's going to tell you about what to do next. That's going to tell you what to optimize. And finally, you get to Gen AI, and that's going to help people understand and act. So the mistake that many organizations make is starting with AI, starting with the Gen AI, and instead of thinking about the business problem that they're trying to solve. The message here is to focus on the operational outcome first and let the technology support that goal. And that's exactly what leads us to the bigger vision of a truly dynamic warehouse. The ultimate goal here is not smarter software, it's smarter warehouses. Building a dynamic warehouse means building a warehouse that can automatically respond to change. A dynamic warehouse should learn from changing conditions. It should adapt to decisions in real time. It should empower people with better operational intelligence, and it should deliver better business outcomes. So with all that said, if you remember just one thing from today's presentation, let it be this. Do not start your AI journey by asking, where can I use AI? Start by asking, which operational decisions matter most? Because better warehouse decisions lead to better warehouse performance. And that's where AI creates its greatest value. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andre, for a very thoughtful presentation, some great highlights there, and some great insight on AI, Gen AI, and where to get started. So just a couple housekeeping things to let you know. We do have some time for questions, so you will see the Q&A icon at the very top. If you do have some questions, open that up and drop them into the conversation. We can ask those. For those who were not able to join us today, or if you were able to join us and are interested in going over the presentation again, we will be following up and sending out a recording afterwards over the next couple of days. So I do have a couple questions, Andre, to kind of get started here, and hopefully we'll have a few more come in. As I said, check out that Q&A icon, type your question in, and hopefully we can get Andre to answer it for you. But a couple questions kind of to get started is, you did mention something about data and data being siloed. That seems to be a fairly common problem. What are some ways maybe folks can get started if their data is siloed? What are some things they can start with to get moving there?
I think that most warehouses already have the data. The data is just not connected, so they don't have any actionable intelligence. So if we look at that maturity staircase, I think the roadmap is really about, one, connecting the data, gaining visibility to the data you already have, and then starting to look into ways to predict how you can generate better insights out of that data, so you can finally optimize your decisions. So the very first step, if you have your data siloed, is to finding a way to connect your data.
Okay, fantastic. Again, if you have any questions, drop them into that Q&A chat and we can ask them. Another one I had here is, we talked a little bit about slotting, Andre, and tell me a little bit about how AI handles those competing goals many times in slotting, right? Because you have so many inputs, like you said, and many times some of those are at odds or competing. How does AI handle some of those, especially when it comes to slotting?
Well, that is actually why AI is very valuable, because traditional slotting tends to optimize one thing. But the reality is that slotting has to handle a lot of balancing across a lot of different dimensions. You have product velocity, affinity dimensions, batching, seasonality, compatibility, and those goals, they often generate conflict. And AI is a great tool for slotting because it's going to help you evaluate all of those dimensions simultaneously. And it's going to help you continuously adapt your system as order profiles change.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you for that. Another question we had is, we talked about some system software, things like that. How much of a lift might implementation be with some of these solutions, and what's a realistic ROI timeline, would you think?
Well, I think the right answer is probably it depends, because the effort depends a lot on what decisions you're trying to improve. So rather than replacing warehouse systems, you should look at decision intelligence as something that sits on operational data and is going to help you improve specific decisions. So my suggestion is start with a high value problem first. Take slotting or travel or labor, and then start measuring the improvements that you get and expand from there. That way you're going to be able to calculate your ROI and have a better grasp on how long it's going to take you to pursue that implementation.
Okay, great. Thank you. You talked a little bit about AI and recommendations and Gen AI, and the idea that many times these are recommendations and challenging the system, which I love in terms of being able to optimize and it being able to learn. So talk a little bit about that, in terms of supervisors being able to trust and then override some of the recommendations and how that works into the system learning, right?
That's right. Yeah, so I think the main idea here is that AI is going to provide you with recommendations, but at the end of the day, in an environment like a warehouse, you really want people to decide. You really need to have a human in the loop. So having that Gen AI capability there to explain what's happening and what's the recommended course of action, that's critical. So that's going to help supervisors understand why the recommendation is being presented. It's going to help them understand the benefit of that recommendation. And also it's going to offer them any assumptions that they need to be made aware of related to why that recommendation is being presented to them. So it's really important to have that supervisor still being the human in the loop, not necessarily using Gen AI to replace that individual.
Right, and I think that's a great suggestion too. We talk about it here at Lucas quite a bit, is the human in the loop aspect remaining a big part of any sort of AI or machine learning sort of capability. So I think that's great advice as well. One thing that we get, and just a reminder, if any more questions out there, if you have a few, the Q&A icon is up there. Just open up that box and ask your question in there, and Andre can answer it for you. We do have a couple other ones, Andre. One I think that we get often is how might these AI systems or software, anything out there now, work with any existing WMS, for instance, or any other automation? Does it work with them closely? Should it work with them closely, or does it replace them?
It does not replace them. The decision intelligence component that we talked about here today, it actually complements your existing investments. The WMS is still going to execute. Automation is still going to automate, and decision intelligence is going to help you determine the best action using operational data. So you're going to use Gen AI to explain those recommendations, and all of that is happening on a layer above the operational environment that you already have. So it's just an additional layer that's bringing intelligence to processes and procedures that you already have in place today.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's important to understand, that in many cases you don't need to replace anything. It's just, like you said, another layer of optimization on top of that that should work with what you have to make it even better. So we have time, I think, for one more question, Andre. So I'm going to wrap it up here with sort of putting a bow on this and just asking you in general, where do you see warehouse AI heading here over the next few years? It's expanded so much even over the last 4 or 5 years that we've seen here at Lucas when we first started talking about it, and some thought leadership we did several years ago. Where do you see it going now in the next few years beyond?
I think AI is going to continue to improve the way warehouses run their operations. It's going to make the insights more actionable, and is going to make the insights, the recommendations, easier to understand and to consume. So the path that we have ahead of us is really one where intelligence is going to be made available almost as a commodity, because the systems are just going to get smarter and smarter from where we are right now.
Fantastic. And I think that's a great note to end on. So thank you very, very much, Andre, for that presentation. A lot of great practical information, a lot of great sort of delineating where we've been and where we are now and where we're hopefully going. So I think that's really important and really wonderful. And again, just a couple notes to wrap up. We will be sending out again. And if you could advance to that last slide there, Andre, we want to make sure that folks have an opportunity to get our dynamic warehouse thought leadership. So there is a QR code there. You can take a photo of that with your phone, hopefully, if you have another device next to it, and download our thought leadership around the idea of the dynamic warehouse. So with that, again, thanks to Andre for a fabulous presentation. Thank you all for joining us today. We will be following up with you soon, and have a great rest of the day, whether that's a morning or an afternoon, wherever you may be. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evan, and thank you, everyone.